Welcome to my parlor. I'm Priscilla Andrews with Prairie Parlor, and today I have a tutorial for you on how to make a tulip cane. Well, at least how to make a tulip cane like I did. I made a light switch plate for our new entry room, and I like to change it every season. In this light switch plate, I put some tulips that I have in my garden. I'm going to show you today how to make these tulips. All of these tulips are found in my garden, and that's where I got the inspiration. One thing I need to let you know is that you have to have a fanfold Skinner blend ready for this tutorial. If you don't know how to do that, look in the box below, and I have a link to a tutorial from RB Jules, who is another member of the Tiny Pandora Design Team. I've been on that team for a couple years too, and she has an excellent tutorial on how to do a Skinner blend and then do a fan fold for it. So pick your color. You're going to have to do that with both your tulip color and the green that we're going to use for the leaves. So pick your color, get your blends done, and then we'll go over there. Over there. Here are the supplies you're going to need to complete this project. What I have used in my Skinner blend for this lavender, which actually matches one of the tulips we have in the yard, is this is souffle guava, and then this is turnip souffle. And I used about a 1:4 ratio of my dark to my regular color and then my white. And my white looks funny because it's a blend of souffle and primo. And then to get a darker outline for the tulip shape, I blended even more of this, probably about half and half. And then I added just a little ball of dark purple. And that is going to be what we're going to wrap the canes up in. For my leaf, I am using olive green leaf green. This is the Kato leaf green that I used. And to get it darker for your Skinner blend, I used navy. This is Kato navy. And then again, my primo and souffle mix of white. And that's going to be the outline for your cane. This is what you use for your Skinner blend, but this is what you're going to use to outline your leaves. And to get this a little bit darker than the darkest on here, I don't know if you can see that, just a little bit darker, I went back and I added more blue, and then I added just a little ball of black. So that gets us a little bit darker outline for the leaf that we're going to make. You're going to need an awl, and if you don't have an awl, you can use toothpicks, or these are just broken up ends of my big long Q-tips, I think, and your blade. The other thing that you're going to need is some extruded pieces. This is the way I pack my cane. This is the disc that you need to make these handy dandy little triangle shapes for packing. And then this is the other disc, which is the hexagon for more packing on your disc. The other thing that you're going to need to have is your translucent rolled out to, I think this is a number 3 or 4 setting. Feels like a 4. I use Cernit Translucent. That's my favorite. It's usually pretty soft, and it's so clear. So the translucent that I'm using in my cane today is Cernit. We're going to set the green aside for now, and we're going to start making the petals of our cane with this color. What I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm going to cut the cane in half half aside. And then I'm going to cut that part in half. Doesn't look like much, but it's amazing how quickly that cane builds up. Because remember, we are making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves or 5 petals on this. So now I'm going to take my dark color and I'm going to wrap this. And it's very important that you wrap this around the cane this way so that your blend shows. So go ahead and wrap your other piece, and then I'll show you what we do next. Here is the petal shape that I'm going for today. You can do it however you want, or I'm sure you're used to reducing, but the tulip that I'm imitating has a beautiful deeper purple base, and then fades out to white. So to get that effect from this square cane, what I do, in case you decide to do it this way, you can just reduce it like this if you want, but I take 2 opposing corners and I kind of squish them together, all while keeping those sides down. Don't let them get up too high, otherwise you end up with a real wonky cane. So that way I have that purple at the base and the lighter up on the edge of the leaf. I also want to mention, as we're doing this, to reduce it this way so it gets longer, rather than reduce it this way so it gets longer that way, because we want the cane deeper. We don't want it long and skinny. So make sure as you're doing this, and that's why pushing those sides down is important, so that you keep working with the same amount of clay that you have, and just keep reducing that. But while you're reducing it, still forcing it to be a wider cane rather than a longer cane. So I'm going to finish this up, and then we'll move to the next step. Now, through the magic that is video, I have my 2 petals here. And what I do before I proceed is I kind of set them together the same way that the color is laid out, to make sure that I have them about the same size. Because if they aren't, that's going to go all wonky in your reduction, and it's going to show up and throw your tulip off. So I'm just making sure they're the same size, and they look pretty good. So now what we're going to do is put those together like this. And now we're going to cut the petal that is rounded for the middle. Go back to your original block, and I'm going to take about a third, just under a half of that, and then wrap that, and I'll show you how we're going to shape it. All right, here's that other piece that I cut out to make our middle petal, and I actually started forming it before I remembered that I was doing a tutorial, so sorry about that, but you can kind of see where I'm going with this. What I'm going to do now is I'm rounding the bottom up as much as I can to get that purple up there, that darker purple up there, because when I make it pointy on the bottom to fit in there, you know, that's just going to squish all this purple together. So to control my colors, I often just roll it like that. See what that does? If you want that color to go up with the rest of it, just roll it around on your board a little bit before you pinch it on the bottom. And then I'm going to do the same for the top, because that's going to be our curved petal that goes in the middle. So we're starting to get rounded on the top, but see what's happening here. And again, to keep all of our colors, I always go back and squish it. And no, I'm not undoing what I just did by doing that, because what I did is, see how the color is starting to curve? I'm moving everything when I do that. I'm not just moving that corner. And a lot of people have asked questions about cane reduction, and it's issues like these that come up when you try to reduce a cane and it doesn't work very well for you. So I thought I'd just share a few of those tips. So I'm going to point this down on the bottom and round it up on the top. And again, remember to work on your reduction going this way rather than this way, because we want it thicker and taller, not longer and skinnier. Okay? Okay, I have my middle petal kind of formed and done here, but now I need to check for size. And it's pretty big. And so I'm just checking some options here, but I can see clearly that has to be made smaller. Okay, let's see how I'm doing here. And just to let you know before I move forward, is this is kind of what I'm using for reference here. This dark purple picture I found of the tulip. So this one, it goes all the way down to the bottom, and you can do that if you want, or you can have the bottom closer together, as you see when it's more closed. But note that the top is rounded, but it still has a point. So I have my top, and I think I've got it about where I want it. But now I have to make that top a little bit pointed here after I went and made it all flat. Oh well, we can get over that. So I'm just going to point that top up a little bit. I use my work surface for a lot of this stuff. But now, since that got wider, because I was reducing it, I have to make that point wider too. So let's see how we're looking. Because I want that point to be about the same height as the other. And they look pointier on my finished canes than it does here. And you'll see why when we do that. You know what? I think I'm going to cut that off and go with that. I'm pretty happy with that. Okie dokie. I think we're ready to move ahead with putting this in here. Let's see how that looks when I fit it together. I think that's still a little high. I'm going to go down a little bit further. And this is personal preference, because honestly, are we making anything that's going to look perfect? After all, nature doesn't look perfect. And I'm pretty happy with that. It might seem kind of open, and right now it is, but you'll see how we put that all together. Now, here's that part that I cut off of the middle piece because it got bigger. This is why I said to save it, because what we're going to do is reduce that down real small, and that's going to become the other points in here if you want. That's totally up to you. If you're happy with the tulip looking like this, that's just fine, because you're going to have plenty of points there to work with. I'm going to reduce this and see how I like it as to whether or not I'm going to include it or not. I have that reduced to this size. That's pretty small. I didn't worry about covering it if I got off the edge, because we've got our outline right there. So I'm just going to check this for size. And it's still a little bit big. Or, again, preference. If you want to just put it down farther, you can do that. But I think, in my experience, I get a little more distorted that way. So I want to keep it pretty much like this, but with this in there. So I'm going to make that just a little bit smaller. Okay, I think I might be on the right track now. Think I got the right size, and that looks just about perfect to me. Remember, this is all going to pull together as we reduce, so you don't want to get them too close together at this stage. Every time I'm working on a cane, I'm working on how is that going to reduce. I'm just marking this where I need to cut it for height so that I can put that in the right place. And it looks like right here is going to be good. And there, I'm done with one. Now, looks like I got to start all over with the next one because I don't have enough cane there. So this is where I'm going to pick up this handy dandy last piece, wrap it, and reduce it to this size. And now I have a guide, so it shouldn't take as long. Okay, I reduced the second background petal, and I think I'm almost there. I compare the size. Oh, almost perfect. Now again, I have to mark where I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to make it a little thinner on the bottom. I'm going to open that up and tuck that right in there. Okay, there's our tulip. Doesn't look like much right now. I'm going to just point those up a little bit more now that I have everything else completed and I know approximately where I want to end up. So we're just about ready to go with that. But first we have to do the leaves. And what I'm going to have you do here is the very same thing we did in wrapping these. You're going to take this and our dark wrap, and I am going to start by cutting about a fourth or a third of that off, and I'm going to wrap that, and I'm going to show you how to shape the leaf. I did it again. I wrapped it and started forming it. We're going to do pretty much the same what we did with our tulip here, except this time I want you to make it long and thin. Think of what a tulip leaf looks like, and they're long and skinny. Something like that. That's plenty big, so I'm going to reduce it in size also, get it a little bit smaller, and then I'll be back and show you what we do next. I think I have this about the right size and shape now, and depending on how much you have left of this, you might have to go ahead and cut this up to make another leaf, or make a different one. Now you need to make a decision here of how you want your leaves to be, because if you look here on the leaves here, I kind of wrapped them up on the side, and I don't think I like that as well. This was one of the very first ones I made. So when I got to the purple one, I do have the leaves up on the side, just not as obvious. And then I dropped down and put a couple stems in and a leaf. And I think I like that better. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do with this one. So I'm going to take this leaf, and before I put the shadows on, in terms of where my highlights are, I look at where the light is shining, in this case down from the top, because the leaves are lighter, or the petals are lighter on the top. So our leaf is going to have to be similar too. The light is going to be on the top where the sun hits. So I am going to cut out, I'm going to make 3 leaves today. So go ahead and make 3 of these, or however many you want. And then we're going to put them together. Okay, I have the 3 leaves that I wanted. And then I'm keeping this, which is a part of one of the leaf ends that I cut off, because we're going to do something with that in a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of put the leaves out here where I think I want them. And I haven't decided if I want a leaf right up next to this flower or not, but I am going to make 1 leaf. going to be kind of off by itself on the side like that. So what's going to go here to keep it all together? Well, that's where this piece comes in. I'm just going to kind of push that down to make it a long and skinny piece. And that's going to become our stem. And remember, tulips don't have a lot of stem, and when you reduce it, it gets a little thicker. So I'm going a little bit thinner right now. I think that looks pretty good. So how do we get there? Well, the first thing we have to do, since we decided to leave those spaces there, is fill those spaces with the translucent polymer clay that you cut out on. If you have this steep triangle, that works best. But if you have, this is from my Lucy clay extruder. If you also have the round silver disc with the little more flat triangle, that works too. And what I'm going to do is take the pointed end of this. Well, first I want to make that end nice and flat so I know exactly where I'm working with. And this guy's going in right there. That's kind of big. So let's cut that off right there. And we're going to do the same with the others. How far you push it in is going to determine the angle of the leaf, because the farther you push it in, the farther out the leaf is going to be. And the less you push it in, the closer it's going to be. I think I'll use this piece right here. Okay. This is kind of, I did do a video on packing a cane. And if you've seen that before, you kind of know where I'm going with this. But if you haven't seen it before, what I want you to remember is that every single airspace that you have in this before you reduce it is going to be filled with something. And that something is going to be clay. And it's either going to be filled with this clay coming down or that clay coming up, depending on where you put the pressure when you reduce it. So every space needs to have clay in it. So you might as well put the clay in there that you want. Now, I didn't want this to be any farther out. So instead of putting my triangle in there, well, it broke off so you can see what I did there. Instead of putting the triangle in there with the point down, I put the point in that way to fill the space up that way. And now what I'm going to do, let's see if this is small enough. One of my octagons, my translucent polymer clay, done with the octagon disc. No, hexagon, that's what it is. It's six-sided. My hexagon disc. And I am going to, nope, that's going to be too fat. So I'm going to cut a little piece off. And I'm going to cut that piece in half, right down one of the flat spots. And then I'm going to flatten it out, because I want to maintain that space, but I want the space to get smaller. Yep, there we go. And since I want the space to get smaller, I'm going to smush it down a little bit more on one side. And I think that is going to work just fine, because I want the leaf to come up like that. Now, what you do with these top leaves, you have to decide again. Do you want them touching the flower? If you do, you're good like this. If you don't, like I'm going to leave that little space over there, we're going to go ahead and put this triangle in there. But I'm not going to put it in too far, because I want that leaf fairly close to the flower head. So we've got our triangle there. Another area that you're going to use the triangle on is down here. I like to use the triangle because it has a natural slope on it. And when you put it in back to back, just changing the angle a little bit, it's going to hold that shape there. In this case, I put the back of the triangle cane up next to the leaf. And we're going to keep going with that later, because right now I want you to take that same triangle of your clear polymer clay, your translucent, and you're going to do the very same thing up here. I'm going to use my triangle again on the outside of the leaf though, because I want it to tip down a little bit, look a little more dramatic. And so I'm using the triangle there with the narrow point in. And to keep that shape there, we're going to have to continue filling the polymer clay here, the translucent, I mean. I want it to dip down like that. So we're going to have to fill it, and I'm just shoving that triangle in there. Well, I didn't have the narrow spot there. That's not going to work because, see, I don't know if you can see that. You put that triangle in there, and I've got a space here. And what's going to happen? Well, I told you what's going to happen. Some clay is going to fill it, and probably pieces of the leaf, because I think that clay's softer than my translucent is. So this is where I'm going to take that octagon again. And it's too big. I need to use the smaller octagon. So what are my options? Here's my first option. This is the translucent clay that I set out on a number 3 setting. So I'm going to take that clay and I'm just going to start putting some layers in there. And it looks like I'm going to start by folding this in half and then getting kind of a gauge of, it looks like if I fold it one more time, 3 times, I think that's going to be good enough thickness to fit in that space to hold everything straight as it is now. And almost perfect. Let me show you when I get this cut up how I'm filling those spaces up. So I'm going in and I kind of cut it at an angle. I don't know if you can see that. I kind of angled that because we have a point here to fill. And we have to fill it with that shape. Or again, something else will come in. Fits our space pretty darn good. Looks like it's still a little tall. That's what I'm cutting off the height, because I want you to see what I'm doing. How do we fill the rest of it? Well, again, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to maintain some separation between this leaf and the flower, even though I want it to be up against the flower. And you do that by just forcing the tip of this triangle just under that leaf so that it comes up next to the leaf, but it's also at the top of the leaf. It is just going to come out from that petal a little bit. And that's what I want. I want to show that there. Well, we have this leaf here with the curve. So what we're going to have to do is fill that curve with polymer clay out to the distance between these 2 triangles. And the reason for that is we're going to need more right here than we're going to need in the middle. And to maintain that leaf shape, we have to start packing it that way. If you still have some triangles or octagons left, go ahead and use those. And I'll show you how I'm going to set that up to make that transition. And I took the triangle cane and I'm packing it up against the edge of the leaf there, but with the triangle pointed this way. And now I'm going to do the same on this side because I still want this side to be smaller than the middle. So I'm going to again put the triangle in here, but put it with the point toward the leaf. Like that. So that I can get polymer clay in between these two. And the clay that I'm going to use in between those two is, again, our clay. I had this rolled out at a number 3 setting, but I am going to quadruple it over because I want to see how much thickness I'm going to need there. And I think that looks good, but it's going to take a couple layers. And I'm going to make that curve again to accommodate the curve in that leaf. Perfect. Perfect. Now I'm just going to cut that down again so you can see what I'm doing. And now I'm going to use my awl to get that packed. So we're still not done because our goal is to get everything even before we start reducing. Get all the sides even and everything. And we're still not quite done. And I'm just going to go ahead and fill that with another triangle. And this one. Because now we're getting it filled, but because we put that solid piece in there and followed the curve of that leaf, we're now reinforcing that rather than adding more pressure to it in a different way. And as we start wrapping this and reducing, you're going to be cutting parts of this off. And I'm using translucent only because that's what I like to use. When I use it for something, I end up cutting all around it and getting rid of the translucent, which is just fine if that's what you want. Or instead of using translucent, you might want to use a different background color, depending on what you're working on. Okay, oops, get that point in there. Don't want to leave a hole. Now, if I put that all together and kind of smush it, yep, got to do this one here too. All right, let's move on to this area here because I wanted that leaf to have a little downward curve, and that's only going to happen, again, as we talked about, by putting a piece in there. So I'm going to take this bigger piece and flatten it a little, and we'll see how that works. Okay, I took that flat piece and I kind of rounded the top just a little bit. It's flat on one side, round on the other, because what that's going to do when we put that here now is we're going to be putting a flat piece of polymer clay across it like this, and that extra pressure is going to hold the curve on that leaf. You're going to want to remember to taper the ends out, otherwise you're going to end up with a squared off curve on your leaf. So go ahead and make that round, but make sure you taper those ends off. That this leaf, because I've left that space there, might get a little pushed down like that. So I'm going to take that little round one I started rolling earlier that didn't work, and I'm going to roll it out a little more. And I'm going to put that right there. There. Now that little bit that we did right there is what's going to keep that out of trouble. And then we're going to have to do something similar right down here, because we want to keep that stem straight on the other side too, don't we? I think we got all the spaces and everything that we need here. So I'm going to take my octagon to fill that space right there. Or my hexagon. Why do I keep calling it an octagon? Put my triangle right there. And I have some spaces there. But I'm going to push those closed right now. And when we do that, before we're reducing, that clay doesn't have anywhere to go. So I'm closing that up. Closing those up. And okay, you know, that's looking pretty good there. I was pulling this up and closed some, and what happens is, as you can see, they got very pointed. And that's not too terribly bad, if that's what you want. I don't think that looks too bad. And that's about the effect we're going to get. But we need to stop that pointing right now. And the only way we're going to get that done is to put polymer clay, or to put the translucent. Duh, it's polymer clay. I'm a bright one. Oops. Always work with a flat end so that I can meet it up as I wrap around. So putting this up here, right here, and having the triangles down here, this is going to stop the pointiness from going on, but it's going to keep our shape because we got those triangles in there. So I have this. I should have cut it wider, huh? And that end's not straight, so I'm going to cut that off, because I don't want any of this to be where I don't want it. That's how you end up with misshapen and weird looking stuff after it's reduced. So take those ends and flatten them out so you can meet it right on the end there. So you know exactly how much of this you have going around this flower. I am going to go around this flower 3 times with 3 layers, and then stop and take a look and see how that looks. I have this wrapped around with 3 layers of my translucent that has been put through the pasta machine on a number 3 setting. And I'm comfortable reducing it from here. But if you're not comfortable with that, or not real experienced with canes, what you have to do is, I'm going to square this off for you, but we have to fill all those places with this translucent so that it becomes a square. And we have to do it in a way such that it keeps that. We can't just keep adding this until it's a square. So you see that little dip there? We want to keep that dip. There, I didn't have my end cut off. We want to keep that dip. So to get that pressure on there in that spot, I'm going to put, this is put through on my pasta machine on a number 2. And I'm going to put that on the side. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side to be parallel with that. So you can kind of see what we have to do here is that needs to be filled in by building up layers of this. And in this case, I want to go and build it up by putting less pressure on the places where we want it to go in and more pressure on the places where we want it to stick out. Does that make any sense? See, I want it to start curving in at the top, so I put that there. I'm going to put another one here, because if I put it the whole way here, the whole side of that would be squished in. I just want the bottom in a little bit and the top in a little bit. I want the sides to maintain their rounded shape. So that's why I'm doing it like that. And on the bottom, we need to fill this in to the square shape, and that's where these come in. So what you can do is, I'm going to cut a bunch of these to the length that I need them, and then I'll be right back to show you how I pack it, making it into a square after we have our shape firmed up here. Okay? Okay, I've got a bunch of little clay pellets here, and I'm just going to start filling in where I think it needs to be filled in. The nice thing about the octagon shape, which I like better than using a round shape, is you can put flat sides together. Yeah, one of them got kind of squashed, but you can put these flat sides together and then come in with another layer of these here, and you're building a pretty solid piece of clay to fit where you want it to go. So I'm going to do that for both sides, and then I'll be back. Here I have my handy little, on my way to a rectangle journey. One way that we can, at this point, decide how much more we're going to have to lay down is by just lining this up. And actually, I don't want to get too terribly thick. So I'm going to go with my high points that I have on that side already and cut that off. Same thing here. Cut that off. Same thing on the bottom. And I'm going to cut my bottom off about right there. And here is our rectangle. Looks pretty good, I think. I want to look at the sides and make sure everything is straight and flat. That top, I have a little bit sticking out. I'm going to square that off. Ew, sounds like fingers on a chalkboard when you scrape that blade on this ceramic tile. I think that looks pretty darn good. Rectangle, it's going to be easier to reduce. And if you want to use it, you can, like I do, just cut the translucent off sometimes. Now, for our final layer, to keep everything in place, we're going to wrap it one more time. All right, I got that final layer wrapped all the way around, and we've got a pretty nice rectangle here. And now we're going to reduce it. What's the secret to reduction? Well, I wish I knew. There really isn't one, other than start squeezing. And I always work my way around the cane, so I never get more than one size squeezed at a time. Also, the important thing is to squeeze from the middle, like that, because that's going to push the clay you have inside out. If you just start pulling like this, you're just going to get the edges all coming out like that. So start in the middle. I'm going to work on reducing this that way, going back and forth and back and forth. And I'll come back and show you if I actually know what I'm talking about. Well, this is how far I have gotten with this reduction. And it's really hard to tell whether I'm going in the direction I want to when you've got, you know, this stuff going on. I have about, probably almost doubled the thickness, which I would have if I hadn't cut the other side off, because this is what I'm going to show you. Am I on the right track? Well, I cleaned it up and I think that looks pretty good. Do you see how we got the curves where we wanted them? Somehow on the bottom leaf, one of my triangles got moved. But this is excellent for me to show you how, if you don't pack it right, you're not going to get the effect you want. I'm not worried about that, because when you use this, you can straighten it up or straighten it out or whatever you want to do, or leave it like that. Sometimes your leaves aren't perfect. I also probably would have done this a little differently by packing a little bit more on the side there to keep that leaf going down like that. And I would have packed a little bit more right there so that I didn't get that little center coming back in. So somehow that triangle moved too. But I'm really happy with the top. It came out like we wanted it to. We stopped the pointiness. And from here you can continue to shape it more if you want. Bring that stuff in on there on that side to get your tulip parts even smaller. There's nothing wrong with that. And once you get it to the size that you want it at, you can go ahead and cut this off here too. I don't see any reason to continue with that unless you want to leave it there. But that's what I would do. When I get it to the size I want, I would cut all that excess translucent off. So I'm going to leave it here. I think that's good, and I like it. I hope you do too. I hope you've learned something. And please, if you do make more, or if you make a tulip from this tutorial and you belong to any of the Facebook groups that I do, post a picture of what you did and how you and how this helped you. But I really like to know how it might not have helped, or what you'd like to have learned or heard more of, because I really enjoy sharing this process with people, especially in this time when you can't go take classes. So there you go. There's our tulip.